Hi, folks. Welcome to the Economic Reality Channel. My name is Kurt. Thanks for being here. Please like, share, subscribe. I am trying to still grow this channel. I haven't given up yet, so your support is appreciated. Um, I have made it back to Western North Carolina, Murphy, and this is my previous hometown, and I found a nice little place to hang my hat for a few days, but still wrapping up some things, picking up some checks, getting some things sorted out, and just wanted to drop a video to kind of update everyone on what's going on out there. So I'll be going down to Florida in about a week to visit some friends and family that I have not seen for a few years. So I have a place down there that I'll be able to set up shop in. And I'm looking forward to catching up with some family and friends and spend a little time down in a warmer climate. It's starting to get chilly here. It's in the 30s. It's beautiful fall weather here in Murphy, North Carolina. I love it. But I will go explore some warmer climate here in a few days. So, government shutdown, day 36. Why does that matter to us? Well, I've already talked about the SNAP benefits. I've talked about how that's going to create some conflict. They're funding SNAP, they're half funding SNAP, they're not funding SNAP. I don't know. But the program itself is probably, when the government shutdown ends, is going to be restructured in a much different way. So there's going to be a lot of different requirements for you to receive those benefits, and it's probably not going to make people very happy. But again, it's ongoing, and it's just one layer of this challenge that the government shutdown is creating. And so, what do I mean about that? Well, so when the banks settle their daily account, according to modern money mechanics, fractional reserve banking, they have to have certain amount of cash on hand or available, digits, ones and zeros. And so here recently, the banks have shown signs of severe insolvency. Now, I'm not saying the bank is going to go under, but it's something to pay attention to, because what they do to settle their books every night is they go to the Fed reverse repo window and they borrow. And if they need $2 billion, they'll borrow $2 billion from the Fed. The Fed creates the Treasury, and the Treasury is deposited and it's paid back at 4% interest the following business day. Hasn't really been something that's been a big deal. It's the way the system operates. But on Friday, October 31st, the banking industry had to borrow $52 billion to settle their books. And if I could show you the graph, I would, but it basically shows, where the borrowing is, and then on October 31st, it just shot up. Well, that caught my attention, and I was kind of like, okay, what could cause the banks to, be in a cash crisis? It's a liquidity type crisis. They don't have enough cash on hand. And it started clicking that with this government shutdown, we have about 750. First of all, the government is the biggest employer in the country, period. All right. And when they shut down, 750,000 people were put on furlough, laid off, no paycheck. There was another 700,000 people that are considered essential, whether that includes TSA, air traffic controllers, I'm not sure. But the essential employees were told you still need to show up for work, but you're still not getting a paycheck, which I would have a problem with. Nonetheless, we're talking about 1.5 to 2 million people who have not received their monthly paycheck. Now, think about that as it relates to banking. Where does that paycheck go every month? It gets most likely directly deposited into the banking system. So we're starting to see the effects of the shutdown in a much different way. The banks are starting to feel it. They're having to borrow more money from the Fed. The Fed has been cranking up the printing presses. I think they've created about $200 billion of new money in the last week. So we've entered into the quantitative easing mode, much like we did during COVID. And the Fed is going to keep the banks alive as long as they can. And it's going to have the same effect. It's going to drive debt up. It's going to drive the cost of goods up. It's going to affect inflation, cost of everything. So we're in the same vicious cycle. It's just different. And I don't think it's going to change anytime soon. And the reason I say, it's not you can make a right versus left argument. I'm not in that game. I think the government system has failed us. $38 trillion in debt. It's just not repayable. I don't care what kind of tariff you put out there. It's just not going to be solvent at any point. So we're going to continue to drive the debt up. It's going to impact lending. The banks now will be a little more restrictive, a little more concerned about who they're lending to. They're more concerned about balance sheets than they are you buying a home or buying a new car. So lending could get, a little tighter. The money restriction could start to happen, and you might actually see some smaller regional banks go under due to this. I'll get out tomorrow and go to my bank and pull a little bit more cash out, not because I think they're going under or anytime soon, but I just would feel better if I had a little bit more cash in my pocket or in my safe. So we're starting to see the layers of this government shutdown take effect. Another ripple from this is the transportation industry, airline. The reports coming out about wait times at TSA are remarkable. I don't fly. I haven't flown since COVID. I'm not allowing some TSA stranger to, touch me inappropriately. So if I can't get there by vehicle, I'm not probably going to go there. But if you have flight plans, you might want to kind of pay attention, because the reports are that TSA has had a lot of people call out. They're not getting their checks, they're calling out sick. There's a shortage of roughly 3,000 air traffic controllers. So, the time to travel by air is drawn close. You probably want to change some plans, or at least adjust your ideas when you go to the airport, because it's going to take a lot longer to get through TSA, and you're going to be dealing with a lot of angry people because they're not getting paid. And so I would recommend you pay attention to, that aspect of the government shutdown, because if you travel by air, it's going to be problematic. The other part of this government shutdown equation is, and I don't think it's going to be resolved anytime soon. And the reason I say is I think that this is all kind of planned out. I think it's just one of those things that they are implementing as part of this crash landing project that they got going on. I think it all started with the whole COVID thing. And this is like phase two. SNAP, banking, you name it. So the other aspect is these employees who, this 1.5, 2 million who have been furloughed. Once the government stays shut down for 60 days, 61 days, these people are fired. They no longer have a job. They don't get reimbursed. They're former employees. So at 61 days, this government shutdown will cut 1.5, 2 million, 3 million possible jobs that will, most likely not come back. And I get it. They're trying to clean up the government. And while there may be some cost benefit there, we just sent 40 billion to Argentina. So, it's not like we're making really good decisions with our monetary policy. We continue to, give other countries money and don't put, American people first. And I think that's unfortunate. But nonetheless, it's going to have that ripple effect, like I talked about. It starts with SNAP. It's starting to creep into the banking industry. There's starting to be cracks in the foundation. And it will expand from there. So I think that it's going to last for at least another 25 days, because they will ultimately want to be able to separate with these 1.5, 2 million government employees. And some they may keep, and others they just want to replace or eliminate. So I think that's a big impact on our financial system, because when all those paychecks are not being deposited into the banks are starting to feel it, and they're borrowing money, and the Fed is printing it, and it's driving the debt up. It's driving the cost of goods up. It's driving everything up, just like it did in COVID in 2008 and 2001. And we're just we're redoing this playbook. The other thing that I'm paying attention to is this escalation in the Caribbean with Venezuela. It's no secret that we're no fan of President Maduro. He's a dictator. He's this, he's that. I'm not a fan. But we pretend that we're going down there because this is some narco drug type of military exercise where we're blowing up these fishing boats that, quite frankly, need to be refueled 10 or 20 times just to make it to the coast of America. And yet we are sending the Gerald Ford aircraft strike group down to the Caribbean. There's 12 to 18 warships sitting off the coast of Caracas. And I don't know if we're doing this as a show of might, or if there's something, strategic that they have planned. But you don't send that type of equipment and that type of manpower. There's allegedly 5,000 to 10,000 Marines, another 10,000 soldiers and Navy men that are aboard these ships. And so, the goal that I believe we have is regime change. That's what we're good at. We've been overthrowing leaders in foreign countries for decades now, and that's what we're best at. You look at Syria with President Assad, and we staged coups, and the CIA paramilitary went in there, tried to take him out, and eventually he just fled the country. And now it's being ruled by an former ISIS head guy, that Jelani, that was is probably associated with who knows how many American deaths, was in American military prison, and now he has assumed leadership of a major Middle Eastern country, Syria, and we approve of it. In fact, the guy is supposed to be in the Oval Office shaking hands with our president today or tomorrow. I'm not sure which. So, we overthrow these leaders to, it's all about resource. We're stealing oil from the northern Syrian oil fields. We did it with Iraq and Saddam. We stole oil over false pretenses. We've overthrown Gaddafi. We've been doing this for a long time. So we're good at it. And we're trying to do it again in Venezuela. Why? Because they sit on the largest oil reserves in the world. period. And we need energy, with all the creation of these data centers, the AI technology that we're bringing in. It all requires extreme amounts of energy, which I mentioned before. So, Maduro's been on the list for a while, and I think it's time that, we go down there and try to run him off and put a puppet in. And it just so happens, coincidentally, that the 2025 Nobel Peace Prize winner, Maria Corina Machado, something like that. Someone I've never heard of, you probably never heard of. She's some Venezuelan civil rights activist, political opponent of President Maduro. She wins the Nobel Peace Prize. We got to shine some light on her because she's, the equivalent of Zelensky in 2014 when we put him into power in the Ukraine, because we wanted to try and overthrow President Putin. And that's not going very well. So we're going to try the same thing down in Venezuela. The problem is there's a lot of financial and military interests with Venezuela from Russia and China. They've actually even reached out to Iran. And there's a lot of equipment that has shown up in Venezuela, a lot of planes, a lot of surface-to-air missiles. And I think, Maduro's not going to tuck and run. I think he's going to, hang out and fight this one out. So we have all these ships offshore. We're trying to run him off so we can put our puppet president in, so that we can then get all our energy companies into the country. Prior to Maduro, President Chavez, when he came in power, late 90s, he threw out BP, he threw out Chevron, he threw out Halliburton. He threw them all out of the country and nationalized the nation's oil supply. So we want to change that. And this new lady who won the Nobel, she's willing to give us everything we want. So we're going to do what's necessary, what we normally do to overthrow another leader. And it may be, a flashpoint in this whole geopolitical environment, because things are starting to, spark up in the Middle East. Still tensions with China and Taiwan. Obviously, Russia, Ukraine. And so it just seems like all the pieces are being laid into place, and we're starting to move those pawns off of the chessboard out, into the open. And, it's almost game on. But just a couple things to pay attention to. I think the government shutdown continues. I think the banking system is hemorrhaging. I think everything is being kept quiet on purpose. I think the shutdown will end with more job loss. So, if you got travel plans, keep that in mind, that there's going to be long waits and there's going to be angry people, rightfully so. And, you never know when there's a shortage of air traffic controllers and some, air accident happens, there's always going to be people that connect the dots. Is this because we didn't have, quality people on duty? So I wouldn't be flying right now, but if you are, just be aware that that could be a challenge. And, as always, as you're out there doing your shopping, getting around town, keep your head on a swivel because people are starting to feel it in different ways. A lot of, when you got China Mart, Walmart, that has a program where you can buy now, pay later. You can literally go into a Walmart, apply online, get a line of credit, go in, buy your groceries, pay 10% of the bill, and finance the rest with interest over 12 months, maybe longer. We're at that point where people will actually finance groceries at Walmart. So you really got to just kind of pay attention to, what's going on out there and, stay safe. I'll leave it there. I'm sure every day there's something new, but this Fed money printing is really concerning for me. It really feels like we're on the cusp of some type of banking crisis, a liquidity crisis, cash crisis. So just, pay attention, and I'll leave an update probably in the next couple days. And I'm looking forward to Florida, and hope you guys take care. Like, share, subscribe. Thanks for being here.